Hi, my name is Rachel Spaeth, and today we're going to draw some life cycles. A life cycle is a series of stages that an organism goes through in its time of being alive, and they include reproduction. We're going to do 3 life cycles today. We'll do a moss, a fern, and a fungi. And with each of those, they all have a spore stage in their life cycle. So we're going to start with a spore for all of them. But first, let's do the life cycle of a moss. So a spore is a haploid stage in a life cycle. Haploid means that it has a single set of unpaired chromosomes, and we designate that by the letter N. The spore is going to undergo mitosis to produce a structure called a protonema. A protonema is multicellular and can contain both the male and female parts. This produces the gametophyte, which is a leaf-like stage that is photosynthetic. And has not true roots, but they're called rhizoids. It is their site of absorption, but they're not very well developed, so we just call them rhizoids. On the gametophyte, we have 2 different structures. We have an antheridia and an archegonia. The archegonia is the female structure, and the antheridia is the male structure. These are going to produce our gametes, which are going to be an egg and sperm. The sperm has 2 subapical asymmetrical flagella, which is a characteristic of all land plants. The sperm and egg are going to fertilize to create a zygote. And our zygote is now diploid, which means it has a copy of paired chromosomes. So we've got 1 set of paired chromosomes, and we designate that by saying it's 2N. The zygote is going to undergo mitosis to produce the sporophyte. The sporophyte is retained on the gametophyte in this case. And it is nutritionally dependent on the gametophyte to be photosynthesizing and producing the sugar compounds that it needs. In the sporophyte, we are going to undergo meiosis to produce spores. In a structure that's called the sporangium. So this is the life cycle of a moss. Next, we're going to compare that to the life cycle of a fern. Ferns are a little bit different because the sporophyte and gametophyte are separate entities, meaning that they aren't dependent on each other for nutrition. So again, let's start with our spore stage because that's our stage that's very similar across all the organisms that we're looking at today. Once again, our spore is haploid. The spore in this case is going to undergo mitosis to produce a heart-shaped gametophyte. And on this heart-shaped gametophyte, we have both the male and female reproductive structures. So again, they're called an antheridia and an archegonia. So here's our female, here's our male. The females are going to produce eggs in our archegonia again, and the males, again, are going to produce sperm with subapical asymmetrical flagella, and this is done through the process of mitosis. We will have a fertilization event that happens. Which produces a zygote again that is diploid designated by 2N. And then in this case, the zygote is going to grow into the large structure that you probably would recognize as being fern-like. This is called a frond of a leaf. And on the underside of the frond, it's not really a leaf, it's but kind of analogous to one because it's a broad photosynthetic organ. On the underside of this, there are structures that are called sori. And the sori contains the sporangium that is going to undergo meiosis to make the spores. This whole structure here is the sporophyte. And it is diploid, or 2N. So this has been the life cycle of a fern. And in this case, we have a gametophyte stage that is separate from our sporophyte stage. Lastly, let's do a life cycle that's not a plant, but still is kind of similar. This time, let's do a life cycle of a fungi. Once again, the fungi do have a spore stage that is haploid, so we'll just start there. This haploid spore undergoes mitosis to produce a hyphae. Mitosis, and this is a hyphae. Now, if you're a fungi, you don't necessarily have to go through sexual reproduction. You could infinitely just keep breaking off pieces of yourself and creating new organisms. So you have your own little side life cycle here, where it's just a loop, and this is asexual reproduction, where there is no genetic recombination that occurs. When we're looking at the hyphae, with the other two life cycles that we discussed, you have male and female parts. You have an archegonia and an antheridia. In this case, hyphae have more than two genders, so a lot of times we call them karyotypes. And so if you're in the wild and you have two different karyotypes that find each other, then you can undergo sexual reproduction. But we don't really call it, we call it something else. So, here we go. So this is called plasmogamy. When you've got two that they align, they're going to dissolve this cell wall between them. Okay, we're going to call it plasmogamy here. And they're going to form this structure. Not all of the cells are going to do this, so you'll just have a couple that end up sharing their genetic material. Let's see, we'll do it this way. And we'll make this one still be minus, and this one still plus. Okay, so now we've created this structure here that's called a dikaryon. And a dikaryon is designated as N plus N. You still have two haploid sets that haven't fused into a nucleus yet. When it does fuse into a nucleus, that's going to be called karyogamy. And so this is your organism that's formed from that. And again, it's going to be called a zygote. And inside this, we have one nucleus that has your plus and minus copies of DNA. Now, there's two different pathways we can go down if we're a fungi. It depends on whether you're an ascomycota or cup fungi, or a basidiomycota. If you're an ascomycota, you are going to undergo, so our zygote is 2N now, you're undergoing meiosis here to make 8 spores inside a structure. If you're a basidiomycota, you're going to still undergo meiosis, but instead you are going to produce 4 spores, and they're going to be on the external side of your cell. And then you'll go back through the cycle all over again. So here you go. This is the life cycle of 2 different kinds of fungi, asco and basidiomycota. Thank you very much.